clinking of champagne glasses and gentle laughter filled the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, but 6-year-old Sofia Rodriguez heard none of it. She sat perfectly still in her pink wheelchair, her small hands folded in her lap, watching as other children ran between tables in their fancy clothes, their patent leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. The wedding reception was beautiful, with white roses cascading from crystal vases and golden lights twinkling overhead, but for Sofia, it might as well have been a museum exhibit behind glass. Her father, Rafael Rodriguez, stood 30 feet away in his perfectly tailored black tuxedo, speaking with business associates who nodded respectfully at everything he said. As the CEO of Rodriguez Industries, a multi-billion-dollar technology company, Rafael commanded attention wherever he went. But right now, his dark eyes kept drifting to his daughter, and each glance made his chest tighten with a familiar ache. The other wedding guests seemed to have developed an invisible barrier around Sofia's table. They would approach, see her wheelchair, offer polite smiles, and then suddenly remember urgent conversations elsewhere. It happened so naturally, so smoothly, that most people probably didn't even realize they were doing it. But Rafael noticed. He always noticed. Such a shame about Rafael's daughter, he overheard Mrs. Peterson whisper to her husband as they passed nearby. So young to be dealing with all that. Makes you grateful for what you have, doesn't it? Rafael's jaw clenched. They talked about Sofia like she was a tragedy to be pitted rather than a brilliant, funny, loving little girl who happened to use a wheelchair. The spinal injury from the car accident 3 years ago had taken her ability to walk, but it hadn't dimmed her bright spirit or sharp mind. Unfortunately, most people never bothered to look past the wheels to see the child sitting in the chair. At the children's table 20 feet away, 8 kids between the ages of 5 and 10 were engaged in an animated discussion about dinosaurs. Sofia loved dinosaurs. She had encyclopedic knowledge about every species and could draw them from memory with startling accuracy. But none of those children had even glanced in her direction all evening. She's probably contagious or something, Rafael heard one child whisper to another, both of them stealing glances at Sofia before quickly looking away. The wedding cake was being cut now, and the photographer was gathering all the children for a group photo. "All kids over here," the photographer called cheerfully, waving his camera. "Let's get all you little ones together." The children at the nearby table jumped up excitedly, smoothing down their dresses and adjusting their tiny bow ties. Sofia straightened in her wheelchair, hope flickering in her dark eyes as she began to wheel herself toward the group. "Oh, not you, sweetie," the photographer said gently but firmly, placing a hand on her wheelchair to stop her. "This might be difficult with your situation. Why don't you stay there and we'll take a nice photo of you separately." Sofia's face fell, but she nodded obediently and wheeled herself back to her isolated table. Rafael felt his heart break into 1,000 pieces. He started toward his daughter, but his business partner caught his arm. "Rafael, there's someone I need you to meet," James Patterson said urgently. "The investor from Tokyo flew in just for tonight. This could be the deal we've been waiting for." Rafael hesitated, looking between his daughter sitting alone and the business opportunity that could secure their company's future. The rational part of his mind knew that Sofia was safe, that she was used to these situations, that he needed to take care of business. But the father in him wanted to scoop her up and leave this place where people saw her as less than whole. 5 minutes, he told James, but as he shook hands with the Japanese investor, 5 minutes turned into 15, then 30. Meanwhile, Sofia sat at her table, carefully arranging the rose petals that had fallen from the centerpiece. She created small patterns with them, her artistic mind finding beauty even in this moment of isolation. She had learned not to cry at these events. Crying made adults uncomfortable, and uncomfortable adults were even less likely to include her in anything. The bride, Elena Martinez, floated by in her flowing white gown, accepting congratulations and air kisses from guests. She was Rafael's business associate's daughter, and he had brought Sofia to show respect for their family's invitation. Elena paused near Sofia's table, her smile faltering slightly as she took in the scene. "Hello, little one," Elena said kindly. "Are you having fun at my wedding?" Sofia nodded politely. "It's very beautiful. Congratulations on your marriage." "Thank you, sweetheart." Elena glanced around, clearly noticing that Sofia was completely alone. "Where are the other children? Why aren't you playing with them?" Before Sofia could answer, Elena's new mother-in-law appeared at her elbow. "Elena, darling, the mayor wants to speak with you. This is important for Carlos's political future." Elena looked torn for a moment, glancing between Sofia and her social obligations. "I should." She began, but her mother-in-law was already steering her away. Of course, dear. Business first, Sophia whispered to herself, unconsciously echoing something she had heard adults say countless times. The live band started playing upbeat music, and couples moved to the dance floor. Sophia watched her father dancing with Mrs. Patterson, fulfilling his social duties as always. He was a good dancer, she noted with pride. Her mother had taught him before the accident, before everything changed. As the evening wore on, Sophia began to feel invisible. Waiters walked past her table without offering her cake or refreshments. Other guests' eyes slid over her as if she were part of the furniture. Even the flower girl, a child younger than herself, seemed to have been warned to stay away. The loneliness was crushing, but Sophia had learned to bear it silently. She understood that her presence made people uncomfortable, though she didn't fully understand why. She could think, laugh, tell jokes, and share stories just like any other child. But somehow, the wheelchair created a wall between her and the world that seemed impossible to break through. She began to wonder if this was how her entire life would be, watching from the sidelines while others lived their lives fully. The thought scared her more than the pain from her daily physical therapy sessions or the complicated medical procedures she endured regularly. Raphael finally extracted himself from business conversations and made his way back to his daughter. His heart clenched when he saw her sitting exactly where he had left her, still perfectly composed but with a sadness in her eyes that no 6-year-old should carry. "I'm sorry, Mija," he said softly, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "Papa had to take care of some things." "It's okay, Papa," Sophia replied, managing a small smile. "I know business is important." The resignation in her voice cut him deeper than any accusation could have. This was his brilliant, beautiful daughter who spoke 3 languages, painted like an artist twice her age, and dreamed of becoming a marine biologist despite never being able to walk along the beach. She deserved so much more than a life of being overlooked and excluded. As Raphael pushed Sophia's wheelchair toward the exit, both of them were unaware that their entire world was about to change because of one woman's simple question. Neither could have imagined that in just a few moments, someone would see past the wheelchair to the extraordinary child sitting in it, and that this encounter would transform all their lives in ways they never thought possible. The night felt heavy with unspoken sadness as they prepared to leave another event where Sophia had been treated as an afterthought rather than a child deserving of inclusion and friendship. Just as Raphael began pushing Sophia's wheelchair toward the ballroom exit, a warm, melodic voice stopped them in their tracks. "Excuse me, but why is this beautiful little girl sitting all by herself?" Raphael turned to see a woman approaching their table with genuine concern etched across her face. She was an African-American woman in her early 30s, wearing a simple but elegant navy blue dress that complemented her natural beauty. Her hair was styled in soft curls that framed her face, and her brown eyes held a warmth that seemed to light up the space around her. Sophia looked up with surprise. Most adults who spoke to her directed their questions to her father, as if she couldn't answer for herself. But this woman was looking directly at her, waiting for her response. The other children were busy playing, Sophia said carefully, unsure how to explain the complex social dynamics that had left her isolated all evening. The woman pulled out the chair next to Sophia and sat down without hesitation, bringing herself to eye level with the little girl. "Well, that's their loss, isn't it? I'm Natasha, and I think you look like someone who might have interesting things to say." Raphael stood frozen, watching this unexpected interaction unfold. Natasha's approach was so natural, so effortless, that it made the evening's earlier rejection seem even more cruel by comparison. "I'm Sophia Rodriguez," his daughter replied, and for the first time all evening, there was genuine enthusiasm in her voice. "Are you here for the wedding?" "I am," Natasha smiled. "I teach Elena's little cousin Maria at Riverside Elementary. She insisted I had to come see her cousin get married, so here I am. But I have to say, you're much more interesting than most of the grown-ups here. What do you think about this whole wedding business?" Sophia giggled, a sound that made Raphael's heart soar. "It's very fancy, but I think weddings are really about 2 people promising to love each other forever. All the rest is just pretty decorations." "Now that," Natasha said with impressed approval, "is the smartest thing anyone has said all evening. You're absolutely right. The dress and flowers are lovely, but the promise is what matters." Raphael cleared his throat gently. "I'm Raphael Rodriguez, Sophia's father. Thank you for talking with her." Natasha stood and extended her hand. "Natasha Williams. And you don't need to thank me for having a conversation with a delightful child. That should be the most natural thing in the world." Her words carried no judgment, but Raphael felt them like a gentle rebuke. How had it become so unusual for someone to simply talk to his daughter that he felt grateful for basic human kindness? "Papa, can we sit for a few more minutes?" Sophia asked hopefully. "I want to talk to Miss Natasha." Raphael checked his watch. They had planned to leave early to avoid Sophia's bedtime, but the joy on his daughter's face made the decision easy. "Of course, Mija. We can stay a little longer." Natasha settled back into her chair as if she had all the time in the world. "So, Sophia, what do you like to do for fun? Besides attending fancy weddings, of course." "I love to paint," Sophia said eagerly. "And I read lots of books about sea animals. Did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts and blue blood?" "I did not know that," Natasha exclaimed with genuine fascination. 3 hearts? That's incredible. What else can you tell me about sea creatures?" As Sophia launched into an animated explanation about marine biology, Raphael watched in amazement. His daughter was glowing with excitement, her hands gesturing expressively as she shared her knowledge. This was the Sophia he knew at home, brilliant, curious, and full of life. But it had been months since he had seen her this animated in public. "You know," Natasha said when Sophia paused for breath, "I have some students who would love to hear about these sea creatures. Have you ever thought about visiting a classroom to share what you know?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Really? They would want to listen to me? Are you kidding? A 6-year-old marine biology expert? They would be fascinated. I bet you know more about ocean life than most adults do." Raphael felt a lump forming in his throat. When was the last time someone had recognized his daughter's intelligence and talents instead of focusing on her disability? "Miss Natasha," Sophia said shyly, "would you like to see some of my paintings sometime? Papa says I'm getting really good at drawing dolphins." "I would absolutely love to see your artwork," Natasha replied without hesitation. "I bet you're incredibly talented." The band struck up a slower song, and couples moved onto the dance floor for a romantic dance. Sophia watched wistfully as parents swayed with their children in their arms. "I used to dance with my mama," she said quietly. Before the accident, Raphael's chest tightened. Sophia rarely mentioned her mother or the time before her injury. The grief of losing his wife in the same accident that had paralyzed his daughter was still raw, even 3 years later. "Dancing isn't just about moving your feet," Natasha said gently. "It's about feeling the music and expressing joy. You can dance in lots of different ways." "But I can't stand up," Sophia pointed out matter-of-factly. "So, some of the most beautiful dancing I've ever seen was done sitting down. There's wheelchair dancing, and there's also just moving your arms and feeling the rhythm. Want to try?" Before Sophia could respond, Natasha began moving her shoulders and arms gracefully to the music, her movements flowing like water. She looked completely natural and uninhibited, and soon Sophia was mimicking her movements, laughing as she discovered she could indeed dance. Raphael watched this extraordinary woman transform his daughter's understanding of what was possible for her, and he felt something shift inside his chest. For 3 years, he had focused on what Sophia couldn't do, on the barriers she faced, on protecting her from a world that might hurt her. But Natasha saw possibilities where others saw limitations. "You're a natural," Natasha explained as Sophia's movements became more confident. "Look at you dancing." Other guests began to notice the unusual sight of a woman and a child in a wheelchair dancing together at their table. Some stared with curiosity, others with disapproval, but Natasha and Sophia were completely absorbed in their joy. Raphael realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't worried about what other people thought. His daughter was happy, truly happy, and that was all that mattered. "Miss Natasha," Sophia said as the song ended, "do you have children?" A shadow of sadness crossed Natasha's face, so briefly that Raphael almost missed it. "I don't have children of my own, but I teach 25 second graders, so I feel like I have 25 kids who keep me very busy." "Why don't you have your own children?" Sophia asked with the innocent directness that only children possess. "Sophia," Raphael warned gently, but Natasha held up a hand. "It's okay. That's a fair question." She looked thoughtful for a moment. "Sometimes life doesn't work out the way we planned, sweetie, but that doesn't mean we can't find joy in other ways. Meeting amazing kids like you, for instance." Raphael sensed there was more to Natasha's story, but he respected her privacy. Everyone carried their own struggles and disappointments. "I think you would be a wonderful mama," Sophia said with the absolute certainty that children possess. "You make people feel special." Natasha's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. That might be the nicest compliment anyone has ever given me." As the evening progressed, the three of them talked about everything from art to animals to favorite books. Natasha listened to Sophia's stories with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and sharing her own experiences teaching children. Raphael found himself drawn into the conversation, amazed at how natural it felt to talk with this remarkable woman. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't the single father of a disabled child struggling to navigate social situations alone. He was simply a man enjoying an evening with his daughter and a new friend who saw them both clearly and accepted them completely. As the wedding reception began to wind down, Raphael realized he didn't want this evening to end. The connection Sophia had made with Natasha was precious and rare, and he feared that once they left tonight, his daughter would return to her isolated world of medical appointments and private tutors. But more than that, he found himself drawn to Natasha's warmth and genuine spirit. She had accomplished something in 2 hours that years of therapy and social interventions had failed to achieve. She had made his daughter feel normal, valued, and seen. As the wedding reception continued around them, Natasha remained completely focused on Sophia, treating her not as a child to be pitied but as an intelligent human being with thoughts and dreams worth hearing. This natural acceptance had an almost magical effect on Sophia, who seemed to bloom under the attention. "You know what I noticed about you, Sophia?" Natasha said, leaning forward conspiratorially. "You have an artist's eyes. The way you look at things, really look at them, tells me you see details that other people miss." Sophia blushed with pleasure. "Papa says that too. He says I notice colors that other people don't see." "That's a gift," Natasha replied seriously. "Not everyone has that ability. What's your favorite thing to paint?" "I love painting the ocean even though I've never been to a real beach," Sophia admitted. "I paint it from pictures and books and from my imagination. Sometimes I dream about swimming with dolphins." Raphael felt his heart constrict. The beaches near their home were not wheelchair accessible, and he had been putting off the complicated logistics of planning a seaside vacation. Hearing his daughter's wistful tone made him realize how many experiences he had unconsciously denied her in his efforts to keep her safe and comfortable. "The ocean in your imagination might be even more beautiful than the real thing," Natasha said thoughtfully. "When artists paint from their hearts and dreams, they often create something more magical than photography ever could." "Do you really think so?" Sophia asked hopefully. "I absolutely think so. Some of the most famous artists in history painted incredible scenes they had never actually seen in person. They used their imagination, their research, and their artistic vision to create masterpieces." Raphael watched as Natasha continued to build up his daughter's confidence with genuine praise and encouragement. This wasn't empty flattery. Natasha seemed to truly see and appreciate Sophia's unique talents and perspective. "Miss Natasha," Sophia said suddenly, "do you want to know a secret?" "I love secrets," Natasha replied with appropriate seriousness. Sophia glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then whispered, "Sometimes I pretend that my wheelchair is a submarine and I'm exploring the deep ocean. I imagine all the fish swimming around me and the coral reefs and maybe even some treasure chests." Instead of dismissing this as childish fantasy, Natasha's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's not just a secret, that's a wonderful story. Have you ever written down your submarine adventures?" "Written them down?" Sophia looked puzzled. "Well, you're obviously a natural storyteller as well as an artist. You could write books about your submarine explorations and illustrate them with your paintings. You could create whole underwater worlds." Raphael watched his daughter's face transform with possibility. No one had ever suggested that Sophia's imaginative play could become something concrete and valuable. "I could write real books?" Sophia asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Why not? You have the imagination, the artistic skill, and the knowledge about sea life. That's everything you need to be an author and illustrator. Some of the best children's books are created by people who see the world in special ways." The conversation was interrupted by Elena, the bride, who approached their table with a warm smile. "I see you've met our wonderful teacher, Natasha. She's absolutely magical with children." "Miss Natasha is helping me think about writing books," Sophia announced proudly. "Books? How exciting." Elena said, though Raphael could see she was still somewhat uncomfortable around Sophia's wheelchair. "That sounds like a wonderful project." "Elena, congratulations again on your beautiful wedding," Natasha said graciously. "Everything has been perfect. Thank you so much for coming. I know Maria was thrilled that you could be here." Elena paused, glancing between Raphael and Natasha. "It's so nice to see Sophia having such a good time. She seems like a remarkable little girl." After Elena moved on to greet other guests, Natasha turned back to Sophia with renewed focus. "Now, tell me more about these submarine adventures. What's the most exciting thing that happens in your underwater explorations? Sophia's imagination took flight as she described elaborate scenarios involving friendly dolphins, hidden caves filled with pearls, and underwater cities populated by mere people who welcomed her submarine with joy. Natasha listened with rapt attention, asking questions that helped Sophia develop her stories further. Raphael found himself completely absorbed in their conversation. He had always known his daughter was intelligent and creative, but watching her interact with someone who truly appreciated those qualities made him see her with fresh eyes. You know what would be really special? Natasha suggested. If you could create a series of books about a little girl who explores the ocean in her submarine wheelchair. Think about all the children who use wheelchairs who would love to read about adventures where the main character is just like them. Sophia gasped with excitement. Other kids like me would read my books? Absolutely. There aren't nearly enough books for main characters who use wheelchairs. You could be a pioneer, showing other children that having a disability doesn't limit your ability to have amazing adventures. Raphael felt tears prick his eyes. Natasha was giving his daughter something he had never been able to provide, a vision of herself as capable, valuable, and able to contribute something meaningful to the world. Papa, Sophia turned to him with shining eyes, could we really make books? With my paintings and my stories. Mija, if that's what you want to do, we'll make it happen, Raphael promised, and he meant it completely. I have some connections in children's publishing, Natasha added quietly to Raphael. If Sophia creates some sample artwork and stories, I could introduce her work to some editors I know. Raphael stared at this extraordinary woman who had just offered to help make his daughter's dreams come true. You would do that? You barely know us. I know enough, Natasha replied simply. I know that Sophia is talented and special, and that she has stories worth telling. Sometimes the best thing we can do is help remarkable people share their gifts with the world. As the evening progressed, Raphael found himself sharing more about their daily life. He told Natasha about Sophia's homeschooling, her physical therapy sessions, and the challenges of finding social activities where she felt included. Have you considered enrolling her in regular school? Natasha asked carefully. I work at a school that's fully accessible, and we have several students with various disabilities who are thriving in our inclusive environment. Raphael hesitated. I've worried about how other children would treat her. At home, she's protected from situations like tonight, where people ignore her or treat her differently. I understand that fear, Natasha said gently, but protection can sometimes become isolation. Sophia is clearly bright enough to handle regular academics, and she needs social interaction with peers. Yes, there might be some challenges at first, but there would also be opportunities for genuine friendships. Other kids would want to be my friends? Sophia asked hopefully. Absolutely. Children are usually much more accepting than adults. They see past differences more easily, especially when they're taught that everyone has value regardless of their abilities or disabilities. Raphael felt a flutter of possibility mixed with terror. He had built his entire parenting strategy around shielding Sophia from rejection and disappointment. The idea of sending her into a regular classroom felt like throwing her to the wolves. But watching her blossom under Natasha's attention made him question whether his protective approach was actually limiting his daughter's potential for happiness and growth. Think about it, Natasha said softly. Sophia deserves the chance to discover what she's capable of in all areas of her life. As the band played their final songs and guests began to leave, Raphael realized that this chance encounter had opened up possibilities he had never considered. Natasha had seen his daughter not as a disabled child to be protected, but as a whole person with unlimited potential. The question now was whether he was brave enough to let Sophia explore that potential, even if it meant risking the safety of their carefully controlled world. As the wedding reception drew to a close and guests began collecting their belongings, Raphael found himself reluctant to end this magical evening. Sophia was still animated and glowing from her conversation with Natasha, more vibrant than he had seen her in months. The thought of returning to their quiet, controlled life felt suddenly suffocating. Miss Natasha, Sophia said as chairs were being stacked around them, will I ever see you again? The innocent question hit both adults like a physical blow. Natasha's face softened with genuine sadness, while Raphael felt panic rise in his chest. How could he let this connection disappear? This woman had given his daughter something precious, a sense of possibility and worth that went far beyond her disability. Well, Natasha began carefully, I'm sure our paths might cross again sometime. But when? Sophia pressed with the persistence that only children possess. I want to show you my paintings and tell you more submarine stories, and maybe you could help me start writing books. Raphael watched the internal struggle play across Natasha's face. She clearly cared about Sophia already, but she was also being appropriately cautious about making promises to a child she had just met. Natasha, Raphael said suddenly, surprising himself with his boldness, would you consider having dinner with us? This week perhaps? Sophia would love to show you her art studio, and we would both enjoy continuing our conversation. Natasha looked startled by the invitation. She glanced between Raphael and Sophia, clearly weighing her response carefully. Please, Miss Natasha? Sophia added her voice to the plea. Papa makes really good pasta, and you could see my dolphin paintings, and maybe we can dance some more? I wouldn't want to impose, Natasha said hesitantly. You both have probably been very busy with your regular routines. Actually, Raphael admitted, our regular routine could use some improvement. We don't entertain guests very often, and Sophia rarely gets to share her artwork with new people. It would be our pleasure to have you visit. The vulnerability in his voice seemed to touch something in Natasha. She studied his face for a moment, perhaps seeing past his wealth and business success to the lonely single father underneath. I have to admit, she said slowly, I would love to see Sophia's paintings. And I'm genuinely curious about these submarine adventures we discussed. Does that mean yes? Sophia asked hopefully. That means yes, Natasha smiled, and Sophia clapped her hands with delight. They exchanged contact information, and Raphael found himself inviting Natasha for the following Sunday evening. As they prepared to leave, Sophia insisted on giving Natasha a hug goodbye, something she rarely did with strangers. Thank you for talking to me tonight, Sophia whispered as Natasha bent down to embrace her. You made me feel special. You are special, sweetheart, Natasha whispered back. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Raphael watched this tender exchange with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. Natasha had clearly made a profound impact on his daughter in just a few hours. But what happened when Sophia became attached to someone who might not want to be a permanent part of their complicated lives? As they drove home through the quiet city streets, Sophia chattered excitedly about the evening, reliving every moment of her conversation with Natasha. Raphael had never heard her so animated about a social interaction. Papa, do you think Miss Natasha really meant it about helping me write books? Sophia asked as he transferred her from her car seat to her wheelchair in their garage. I think Natasha is someone who says what she means, Raphael replied honestly. She seemed genuinely interested in your ideas. I can't wait to show her my studio, Sophia continued as they entered their sprawling house. Do you think she'll like my ocean paintings? I think she'll love them, Mija. But remember, even if she can't help us with everything we discussed, that doesn't make your artwork any less valuable. Raphael was already trying to manage expectations, protecting his daughter from potential disappointment even as he hoped desperately that Natasha would follow through on her implied promises. Over the next few days, Sophia threw herself into preparing for Natasha's visit with an enthusiasm that both thrilled and worried Raphael. She organized her art supplies, selected her best paintings to display, and even wrote down some of her submarine adventure stories in her careful 6-year-old handwriting. I want everything to be perfect when Miss Natasha comes, Sophia announced, directing their housekeeper Maria and rearranging her art studio for optimal viewing. Remember, Mija, the most important thing is just spending time together, Raphael cautioned. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to impress her. But privately, Raphael found himself equally invested in making the evening special. He planned a menu of Sophia's favorite foods, arranged for fresh flowers throughout the house, and even considered hiring a photographer to document the occasion before deciding that might be too much. The truth was, Raphael was nervous about seeing Natasha again. In the magical atmosphere of the wedding reception, their connection had felt natural and easy. But in the light of day, he wondered if he had imagined the spark between them. She was an elementary school teacher who had shown kindness to his daughter. He was a billionaire CEO with a complicated family situation. Perhaps he was reading too much into what had been simple human decency. By Sunday afternoon, both Raphael and Sophia were anxiously watching the clock. Sophia had changed clothes 3 times, settling on a purple dress that she insisted brought out the color of her eyes. Raphael had abandoned his usual casual weekend attire for slacks and a button-down shirt, though he tried to convince himself it was just about being a good host. What if she changed her mind? Sophia asked for the 5th time as 6 o'clock approached. What if she doesn't want to come anymore? Then we'll have a lovely dinner together, just the two of us like we always do, Raphael assured her, though he was privately harboring the same fears. But at exactly 6:15 their doorbell rang, and Sophia squealed with excitement. She came. Papa, she really came. Raphael opened the door to find Natasha standing on their doorstep holding a small wrapped package, looking slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur of their estate. She wore a simple green dress and minimal makeup, her natural beauty enhanced by her genuine smile. "I hope I'm not late," she said. "I got a little lost in your neighborhood. These houses are incredible." "You're perfectly on time," Raphael assured her, stepping aside to let her enter. "Welcome to our home." Sophia wheeled herself forward immediately, unable to contain her excitement. "Miss Natasha, I have so much to show you. Can we start with my art studio? I've been getting everything ready all week." "Slow down, Mija," Raphael laughed. "Let our guest at least come inside before we drag her on a tour." "Actually, I'm just as excited as Sophia is," Natasha admitted, handing the wrapped package to Sophia. "This is just a little something I thought you might enjoy." Sophia's eyes widened as she carefully unwrapped the gift to reveal a beautiful hardcover book about marine biology, filled with stunning underwater photographs. "Oh my goodness," Sophia breathed, flipping through the pages with reverent care. "Look at these pictures, Papa. They're exactly like what I imagine in my submarine adventures." "I thought it might inspire some new artwork," Natasha explained, "and maybe spark some new submarine adventure stories." "This is the most beautiful book I've ever seen," Sophia said, clutching it to her chest. "Thank you so much, Miss Natasha. I'm going to treasure it forever." Raphael felt a warmth spread through his chest as he watched this exchange. Natasha had clearly put thought into selecting a gift that would genuinely delight his daughter, rather than bringing something generic or pitiable. "Now can we see your studio?" Natasha asked with enthusiasm that matched Sophia's own excitement. "Yes, come on, it's upstairs." Sophia began wheeling toward the elevator, chattering about all the paintings she wanted to share. As they rode up to the second floor, Raphael found himself seeing his home through Natasha's eyes. The house was undeniably luxurious, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and priceless artwork adorning the walls. But it was also somewhat sterile, lacking the warmth and lived-in comfort that made the house feel like a home. "This is it," Sophia announced as they entered her art studio, a bright, spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking their landscaped gardens. Natasha stepped into the room and gasped with genuine amazement. The walls were covered with Sophia's artwork, dozens of paintings in various stages of completion, ranging from simple childhood drawings to surprisingly sophisticated watercolors of marine life. "Sophia, this is incredible," Natasha said, moving slowly around the room to examine each piece. "Your talent is remarkable. Look at the way you capture light in this underwater scene." Sophia beamed with pride as she guided Natasha to her favorite pieces. "This one is my submarine approaching a coral reef," she explained, pointing to a vibrant painting full of tropical fish and swaying sea plants. "And this one shows the view from inside the submarine looking out at a school of dolphins. The detail in these paintings is extraordinary," Natasha marveled, kneeling down to get a closer look at Sophia's work. "You have a real gift for composition and color. Have you had formal art training?" "Papa arranged for art teachers to come to the house," Sophia replied. "But mostly I just paint what I see in my imagination." "That's the mark of a true artist," Natasha said seriously. "Technical skill can be taught, but vision and creativity come from within. You have both." Raphael watched from the doorway as Natasha spent nearly an hour examining Sophia's artwork, asking detailed questions about her techniques and inspiration. Her interest was clearly genuine, not the polite attention that most adults gave to children's art. "Miss Natasha," Sophia said finally, "do you want to hear about my latest submarine adventure? I wrote it down like you suggested." "I would love to hear about it," Natasha replied, settling into a chair positioned at Sophia's eye level. Sophia pulled out a notebook filled with her careful handwriting and began to read her story about discovering an underwater library where sea creatures went to learn about the world above the waves. Her imagination was vivid and her storytelling instinctive, creating a narrative that was both whimsical and surprisingly profound. "That's wonderful, Sophia," Natasha said when the story concluded. "You've created a whole world with its own logic and magic. This is definitely the beginning of something special. Do you really think I could turn these into real books?" Sophia asked hopefully. "I think with some development and the right publisher, these stories could touch many children's hearts," Natasha replied. "Would you like me to reach out to some of my contacts in children's publishing?" I can't promise anything, but I'd be happy to share your work with people who might be interested. Sophia's face lit up with excitement, and Raphael felt his throat tighten with emotion. This woman was offering to help make his daughter's dreams come true, expecting nothing in return. As they made their way back downstairs for dinner, Raphael found himself studying Natasha more closely. She moved through their opulent home without seeming impressed or intimidated by the wealth on display. Her focus remained entirely on Sophia, treating her as an individual worthy of serious attention and respect. Dinner was a revelation. For the first time in years, their formal dining room was filled with laughter and animated conversation. Natasha drew both Raphael and Sophia into discussions about art, literature, teaching, and travel. She shared stories from her classroom that had Sophia giggling uncontrollably, and she asked Raphael thoughtful questions about his business that went beyond the usual superficial small talk. "This pasta is absolutely delicious," Natasha complimented as they enjoyed Raphael's homemade linguine with clam sauce. Sophia wasn't exaggerating about your cooking skills. "Cooking is one of my few hobbies outside of work," Raphael admitted. "I find it relaxing after long days at the office." "Papa taught himself to cook after Mama died," Sophia added matter-of-factly. "He said we needed to learn to take care of ourselves." An awkward silence fell over the table as Raphael realized his daughter had just mentioned her mother's death so casually. He usually tried to steer conversations away from that painful topic when meeting new people. "I'm sorry for your loss," Natasha said gently. "That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you." "It was," Raphael replied simply. "But we've learned to take care of each other, haven't we, Mija?" "We make a good team," Sophia agreed, reaching over to squeeze her father's hand. Natasha smiled at their obvious bond. "I can see that. You're both very lucky to have each other." As the evening progressed, Raphael found himself sharing more about their life than he had intended. He told Natasha about the challenges of running a major corporation while being a single father, about his fears of not being enough for Sophia, and about his struggles to give her a normal childhood despite their unusual circumstances. "There's no such thing as a normal childhood," Natasha replied thoughtfully. "Every family has its own challenges and blessings. What matters is love, support, and helping children discover their own potential. From what I can see, you're giving Sophia all of those things." Her words offered him a comfort he hadn't realized he needed. For 3 years, he had second-guessed every parenting decision, wondering if a different choice might have led to better outcomes for his daughter. As the evening wound down, Sophia began to show signs of tiredness, though she fought against it valiantly, not wanting her time with Natasha to end. "I think someone needs to get ready for bed," Raphael observed gently. "But Miss Natasha just got here," Sophia protested, even as she yawned. "And I had a wonderful time," Natasha assured her. "Thank you for sharing your artwork and your stories with me. I feel very honored that you trusted me with your creative work. Will you come back soon?" Sophia asked hopefully as Raphael prepared to wheel her upstairs for her bedtime routine. "I would love to come back," Natasha replied, and Raphael felt his heart skip at the sincerity in her voice. As Raphael helped Sophia get ready for bed, his daughter chattered excitedly about every moment of the evening, reliving her favorite parts of their conversation with Natasha. "Papa, do you like Miss Natasha?" Sophia asked as he tucked her into bed. "I think she's a very nice person," Raphael replied carefully. "She was certainly kind to you tonight." "I think she's perfect," Sophia declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "I hope she becomes part of our family." Raphael's breath caught at his daughter's innocent words. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Could someone like Natasha actually want to become part of their complicated world? When he returned downstairs, he found Natasha in the living room, looking out at their garden through the large windows. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "Very peaceful. But lonely sometimes," Raphael found himself admitting. "We don't have many visitors." "That's understandable. It must be difficult to know who to trust when you're in your position." Her insight surprised him. Most people assumed that wealth made everything easier, but Natasha seemed to understand the isolation that often came with success. "Tonight was special," he said honestly. "I haven't seen Sophia this happy in a long time." "Thank you for that. She's an extraordinary child, Raphael. You should be very proud." "I am. But I also worry that I'm not giving her everything she needs. Watching her with you tonight made me realize how much she craves normal social interaction." "Have you given any more thought to enrolling her in school?" Natasha asked gently. "I've been thinking about little else since our conversation at the wedding," Raphael admitted. but I'm terrified of exposing her to rejection or cruelty. Those are valid fears. But isolation isn't protection, it's limitation. Sophia is strong, intelligent, and remarkably resilient. She might surprise you with how well she handles social challenges. As they continued talking, Raphael found himself drawn to Natasha's wisdom and compassion. She had a way of seeing situations clearly while remaining optimistic about possibilities for growth and change. When she finally prepared to leave, Raphael felt reluctant to let the evening end. "Would you consider having dinner with us again next week?" he asked hopefully. "I would love that," Natasha replied with a smile that made his heart race. As he watched her drive away, Raphael realized that this remarkable woman had not only given his daughter a gift of recognition and encouragement, but she had also awakened something in him that he had thought was gone forever: hope for a future that included love, companionship, and the possibility of healing their small, wounded family. When Natasha arrived at the Rodriguez estate the following Sunday, she carried with her a folder of information that would change everything. Over the past week, she had contacted her publishing connections and scheduled meetings with art therapists who specialized in working with disabled children. But more than that, she had found herself thinking constantly about Raphael and Sophia, unable to shake the feeling that they had become important to her in ways she hadn't expected. "Miss Natasha," Sophia called out as soon as the front door opened, wheeling herself forward with excited energy. "I've been working on new paintings all week. Wait until you see what I created." "I can't wait," Natasha replied, kneeling down to give Sophia a warm hug. "I brought something to show you too." Raphael appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron over his casual clothes and looking slightly flustered. "Perfect timing," he said with a smile that made Natasha's heart flutter. "I was just putting the finishing touches on dinner." As they settled in the living room before the meal, Natasha opened her folder with barely contained excitement. "Sophia, I have some wonderful news. I showed your artwork and stories to my friend Jessica, who works at Rainbow Children's Books. She's very interested in meeting with you." Sophia's eyes widened to the size of saucers. "A real publisher wants to meet me?" "A real publisher thinks you have genuine talent and stories worth sharing," Natasha confirmed. "She'd like to see more of your work and discuss the possibility of developing your submarine adventures into a series." Raphael felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Natasha, I don't know how to thank you. You barely know us, but you've gone so far out of your way to help Sophia." "It's not going out of my way when it brings me joy," Natasha replied simply. "Besides, talent like Sophia's deserves to be nurtured and shared with the world." As they moved to the dining room, Raphael noticed that Natasha seemed more at ease in their home this time. She moved naturally through the spaces, no longer overwhelmed by the luxury but still appreciative of the beauty around her. "Miss Natasha," Sophia said as they enjoyed Raphael's homemade chicken parmesan, "Papa and I have been talking about what you said about school. I think I might want to try it." Natasha looked surprised and pleased. "Really? What changed your mind?" "Well, you said other kids might want to be my friends and maybe some of them would like to hear about sea creatures too. Plus, I could learn things I can't learn just at home." Raphael watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and terror. Over the past week, Sophia had peppered him with questions about regular school, clearly inspired by Natasha's suggestion that she might thrive in a more social environment. "I've been researching schools in the area," Raphael admitted. "There are several with excellent accessibility and inclusion programs. Riverside Elementary, where I teach, has a wonderful special education department," Natasha offered carefully. "We have several students with various disabilities who are fully integrated into regular classrooms. The children there are taught from an early age to value differences and support each other." "Would you be my teacher?" Sophia asked hopefully. "I teach second grade and you'd probably be placed in first grade initially," Natasha explained. "But I would definitely be around to help you adjust, and all the teachers work together to support our students." Raphael found himself seriously considering the possibility for the first time. The thought of sending Sophia into an unpredictable social environment still terrified him, but watching her bloom under Natasha's influence made him wonder if he had been holding her back with his protective instincts. "Could we visit the school sometime?" Sophia asked, "just to see what it's like?" "I think that's an excellent idea," Natasha replied. "Would you like me to arrange a tour? You could meet some of the teachers and see the classrooms. No pressure to make any decisions, just exploring possibilities." As dinner continued, Raphael found himself sharing more about their daily routine. He described Sophia's homeschooling schedule, her physical therapy sessions, and the various medical appointments that structured their weeks. "It sounds like you've created a very comprehensive educational program," Natasha observed. But I noticed there's not much social interaction with peers. That's the part one struggle with most, Raphael admitted. I want Sophia to have friends, but most social activities for children are designed with accessibility in mind. And after situations like the wedding last week, I worry about exposing her to rejection. The wedding was actually unusual in how badly the adults behaved, Natasha said thoughtfully. Children are typically much more accepting and curious rather than avoidant. They ask direct questions, get their answers, and then move on to playing together. Really? Sophia perked up with interest. Kids wouldn't be scared of my wheelchair? Some might be curious about it at first, but once they understand it's just how you get around, most kids would think it was pretty cool. I bet some would even want rides. Sophia giggled at the idea. I could give wheelchair rides? With proper supervision and safety precautions, absolutely. Your wheelchair could become a source of fun rather than a barrier. After dinner, we moved to Sophia's art studio where she proudly displayed the new paintings she had created throughout the week. Inspired by the marine biology book Natasha had given her, Sophia had painted several new underwater scenes with remarkable detail and imagination. This one is my submarine visiting the underwater library from my story, Sophia explained, pointing to a painting that showed her characteristic submarine approaching a structure made of coral and populated with fish carrying books in their fins. The storytelling in your artwork is incredible, Natasha marveled. You're not just painting pictures, you're creating entire narrative worlds. This is exactly the kind of work that publishers look for in children's book illustrators. As Sophia continued showing her new artwork, Raphael found himself studying Natasha's responses. Her enthusiasm was genuine, not the polite encouragement that most adults offer children. She asked technical questions about Sophia's color choices and composition that showed she understood art at a sophisticated level. Miss Natasha, Sophia said suddenly, can I ask you something personal? Of course, sweetheart. Why don't you have a family of your own? You're so good with kids, and you're really pretty, and you make the best conversation. Raphael felt his face flush with embarrassment. Sophia, that's a very personal question. It's okay, Natasha said gently, though Raphael noticed a flicker of sadness cross her face. That's a fair question, Sophia. Sometimes life doesn't work out the way we planned. I was married once, and we tried very hard to have children, but it wasn't meant to be. Then my marriage ended, and I poured all my love into teaching instead. Do you miss having your own family? Sophia asked with the innocent directness that only children possess. Sometimes I do, Natasha admitted honestly. But I've learned that family can come in many different forms. My students feel like my children in many ways, and I have close friendships that sustain me. You could be part of our family, Sophia suggested with the casual confidence of childhood. We have lots of room, and Papa is a really good cook, and we could have our time together every day. Raphael's heart stopped. His 6-year-old daughter had just casually proposed that Natasha join their family, and he found himself holding his breath waiting for her response. That's a very sweet invitation, Sophia, Natasha replied carefully. I love spending time with you and your father, and I hope we can continue to be close friends. Raphael noticed that she hadn't rejected the idea outright, but she also hadn't embraced it. He wondered if she was being polite or if she was genuinely considering the possibility. As the evening progressed, Raphael found himself watching Natasha interact with his daughter at home with increasing awareness. She moved through their spaces naturally now, helping Sophia organize her art supplies and discussing techniques for improving her painting skills. She asked Raphael thoughtful questions about his business and shared stories from her teaching experiences that had them both laughing. Most remarkably, she treated their unusual family situation as completely normal. She didn't seem to pity Sophia or treat Raphael as a tragic single father. Instead, she engaged with them as individuals worthy of her time and attention. When Sophia's bedtime approached, she extracted a promise from Natasha to visit again the following week. As Raphael carried his daughter upstairs for her bedtime routine, Sophia chattered excitedly about everything they had discussed. Papa, I really want to try going to school, Sophia announced as he helped her into her pajamas. Especially if Miss Natasha is there to help me. Are you sure, Mija? It would be a big change from what we're used to, I'm sure. I want to meet other kids and maybe make some friends. And I want to learn new things that I can't learn just at home. Raphael felt a mixture of pride and terror at his daughter's growing confidence. Natasha's influence was clearly inspiring Sophia to reach beyond the safe boundaries they had established. When he returned downstairs, he found Natasha in the living room again. This time she was studying the family photographs displayed on the mantelpiece. Your wife was beautiful, she said softly, indicating a wedding photo of Raphael and Isabella. She was, Raphael agreed, joining her in front of the fireplace. She would have loved seeing Sophia develop her artistic talents. Isabella was an art teacher before Sophia was born. She passed her gift on to her daughter, Natasha observed. Sophia's talent is extraordinary, but her passion for art comes from something deeper than technique. Isabella used to say that art was about seeing the world with your heart as well as your eyes, Raphael shared. I think Sophia inherited that perspective. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking at the photographs that chronicled happier times. Raphael found himself wondering what Natasha thought about entering a family still shaped by loss and tragedy. Raphael, Natasha said finally, I want you to know that I don't take lightly what Sophia said earlier about joining your family. I can see how much you both mean to each other, and I wouldn't want to disrupt that bond. You wouldn't be disrupting anything, Raphael replied honestly. If anything, you brought something to our lives that we didn't even realize we were missing. What's that? Hope, he said simply. Hope that Sophia can have friends, that her talents can be shared with the world, that our small family doesn't have to stay frozen in our protective bubble forever. Natasha turned to face him fully, and Raphael was struck by the depth of emotion in her eyes. You're both very special people, she said softly. I feel honored that you've welcomed me into your lives. The honor is ours, Raphael replied, and he meant it completely. As Natasha prepared to leave, Raphael found himself reluctant to let the evening end once again. These Sunday dinners had become the highlight of his week, and he suspected Sophia felt the same way. Natasha, he said as she gathered her things, would you consider making this a regular arrangement? Sophia clearly loves having you here, and I enjoy your company very much. I would love that, she replied with a smile that made his heart race. These evenings have become very precious to me too. As he watched her drive away once again, Raphael realized that their carefully controlled world was expanding in ways he had never imagined possible. Natasha wasn't just bringing new opportunities for Sophia, she was bringing the possibility of love, companionship, and healing for their entire family. The question was whether he was brave enough to let that possibility become reality. Over the following weeks, Sunday dinners with Natasha became a cherished tradition that both Raphael and Sophia eagerly anticipated. Each visit brought new developments in their growing relationship, and gradually, their formal interactions evolved into something that felt increasingly like family. True to her word, Natasha arranged for Sophia to visit Riverside Elementary, and the experience exceeded everyone's expectations. Far from being intimidated or rejected, Sophia was welcomed with curiosity and enthusiasm by the children she met. Several students were fascinated by her wheelchair and asked thoughtful questions about how it worked, while others were more interested in her artistic abilities when Natasha shared some of her marine paintings. The kids were so nice, Papa, Sophia reported excitedly after their school visit. Tommy asked if I could teach him to draw dolphins, and Sarah wanted to know if my wheelchair could go really fast. Nobody acted scared or weird about it. Raphael watched his daughter's confidence bloom as she described her interactions with potential classmates. The natural acceptance that Natasha had predicted proved accurate. Children were curious about differences rather than frightened by them. Mrs. Henderson, the first grade teacher, thinks Sophia would do beautifully in her classroom, Natasha reported privately to Raphael. She has experience with inclusive education and is excited about the artistic perspective Sophia would bring to class projects. The decision to enroll Sophia in regular school still felt momentous to Raphael, but watching his daughter's enthusiasm made the choice clearer. With Natasha's support and the school's commitment to inclusion, perhaps it was time to trust in his daughter's resilience and social skills. During one of their Sunday dinners, Natasha arrived with more good news about Sophia's artistic pursuits. Jessica from Rainbow Children's Books wants to meet with you next week, she announced, causing Sophia to bounce excitedly in her wheelchair. She's reviewed your portfolio and thinks there's real potential for a children's book series about submarine adventures. A real book meeting? Sophia gasped. With someone who makes actual books? With someone who thinks your stories and artwork could become actual books that children all over the country might read, Natasha confirmed. Raphael felt overwhelmed by gratitude toward this remarkable woman who continued to open doors for his daughter without expecting anything in return. Natasha, I don't know how we'll ever repay you for everything you've done for Sophia. You don't need to repay anything, she replied firmly. Seeing Sophia's talent recognized and nurtured is reward enough for me. As the weeks passed, Raphael found himself looking forward to Natasha's visits for reasons that went beyond her positive influence on Sophia. He was drawn to her warmth, her intelligence, and her genuine caring nature. She asked thoughtful questions about his business ventures and shared insights from her teaching experiences that often gave him new perspectives on life. More than that, Natasha treated him not as the wealthy CEO who commanded respect and deference, but as a man and father deserving of friendship and understanding. She listened when he shared his fears about raising Sophia alone, offered practical advice when he struggled with parenting decisions, and celebrated his successes without being impressed by his wealth. "You know," Natasha said one evening as they cleaned up after dinner while Sophia worked on a new painting in her studio, "you're an extraordinary father. Sophia is lucky to have someone who supports her dreams so completely." "I just want her to be happy," Raphael replied, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "Sometimes I worry that I'm not enough, that she needs things I can't give her." "Like what?" "A mother's perspective. Female guidance as she grows up. The kind of nurturing that comes naturally to women." He paused, realizing how his words might sound. "Not that I think all women are natural nurturers, but..." "I understand what you mean," Natasha said gently. "But Sophia is clearly thriving under your care. You've raised a confident, creative, compassionate child. That doesn't happen by accident." "She's been asking more questions about her mother lately," Raphael admitted. "I try to answer honestly, but sometimes I worry that my memories aren't enough to help her understand the woman Isabella was." "What kinds of questions does she ask?" "Whether her mother would be proud of her artwork. What Isabella's favorite colors were. If she would have been a good art teacher." Raphael's voice caught slightly. "How to braid hair and paint fingernails and other things I don't know how to do." Natasha was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "Would you like me to help with some of those things? I'm not trying to replace her mother's memory, but I could teach Sophia about braiding and nail art if you think it would help." Raphael looked at this generous woman who continued to offer pieces of herself to help his daughter feel complete. "You would do that?" "Of course. Every little girl should know how to braid hair and experiment with nail polish. It's part of growing up." The following Sunday, Natasha arrived with a bag full of hair accessories, nail polish, and other items that Raphael had never thought to purchase. She spent the afternoon teaching Sophia various braiding techniques and showing her how to paint her nails in artistic patterns. "Look, Papa," Sophia called out, displaying her freshly painted fingernails decorated with tiny sea creatures. "Miss Natasha taught me how to make little fish on my nails." Raphael watched from the doorway as Natasha patiently guided his daughter through these traditionally feminine activities, creating memories that Isabella should have been there to make. Instead of feeling sad about what was missing, however, he felt grateful that Sophia was getting these experiences from someone who clearly loved her. As autumn progressed and Sophia settled into her new school routine, the dynamics of their Sunday gatherings began to shift. Sophia would excitedly share stories from her week at school, describing new friendships and classroom adventures. Her confidence had grown exponentially since starting regular school, and she was clearly thriving in the social environment that Raphael had feared would hurt her. "Tommy and I are working on a project about ocean conservation," Sophia reported during one dinner. "I'm doing the artwork and he's writing the facts. Mrs. Henderson says we make a great team." "That's wonderful, Mija," Raphael smiled, though he felt a pang of nostalgia for the days when he was Sophia's only companion and confidant. "And Sarah invited me to her birthday party next weekend," Sophia continued. "Can I go, Papa? She says they're going to have a swimming party, and her mom already checked that their pool has wheelchair access." Raphael felt his protective instincts flare at the thought of his daughter at a pool party, but looking at her excited face, he realized that his fears were no longer serving her best interests. "If you want to go, we'll make it work," he promised, and Sophia's delighted squeal made his concern seem small in comparison. After Sophia went to bed that evening, Raphael found himself alone with Natasha in his living room, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about their respective needs. These quiet conversations had become as precious to him as the lively family dinners. "She's becoming so independent," Raphael observed, swirling the wine in his glass. 6 months ago, the idea of a pool party would have sent me into a panic. Now I'm shopping for waterproof wheelchair covers and researching pool safety protocols." "That's growth," Natasha said with approval. "Both for you and for Sophia. She needed to spread her wings, and you needed to trust that she could fly." "I couldn't have done it without your encouragement," Raphael admitted. "You saw possibilities where I only saw dangers. You would have gotten there eventually. Sometimes we just need someone else to help us see our children clearly." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Raphael found himself studying Natasha's profile in the soft lamplight, amazed by how naturally she had become part of their lives. "Natasha," he said finally, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever regret not having children of your own? I mean, you're so wonderful with Sophia, and clearly you have so much love to give." A shadow of old pain crossed her face. "I went through a period of deep grief about it," she admitted. "My ex-husband and I tried for years to get pregnant. We went through fertility treatments, considered adoption, explored every option available. When none of it worked and our marriage fell apart under the stress, I felt like I had failed at the most basic thing women are supposed to be able to do." "I'm sorry," Raphael said softly. "That must have been incredibly painful." It was. "But over time, I've learned that there are many ways to nurture and love children. My students fill some of that need, and now..." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Being part of Sophia's life has healed something in me that I didn't even realize was still broken." Raphael felt his heart constrict with emotion. "She loves you too. We both do." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither was quite ready to fully explore. Natasha looked at him with an expression that seemed to hold both hope and uncertainty. "Raphael," she said quietly, "I need you to know that I care deeply about both of you. But I also don't want to complicate your lives or create expectations that might not be realistic. What if I told you that the only thing complicating my life right now is trying to figure out how to tell you that I'm falling in love with you?" Raphael said, surprised by his own boldness. Natasha's breath caught, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, she smiled with a warmth that seemed to light up the entire room. "Then I would tell you that I've been falling in love with you too," she replied softly. "With both of you, actually. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being the people I was helping and became the family I never knew I was looking for." Raphael set down his wine glass and moved closer to her on the sofa. "Where does that leave us?" "I'm not sure," Natasha admitted honestly. "This is all new territory for me. I've never been involved with someone who has a child, and I've certainly never felt this connected to a family that isn't technically mine. Maybe we don't need to figure it all out tonight," Raphael suggested, taking her hand in his. "Maybe we can just acknowledge what's happening between us and see where it leads." "I'd like that," Natasha replied, squeezing his hand gently. As they sat together in the soft lamplight, both of them felt the profound shift that had occurred in their relationship. What had begun as kindness toward a lonely child had evolved into something deeper and more complex, a love that encompassed not just romantic attraction, but the genuine care and commitment that real families are built upon. Neither of them knew exactly what the future would hold, but for the first time in years, both Raphael and Natasha felt hopeful about the possibilities that lay ahead. As winter approached, the bond between Raphael, Sophia, and Natasha had deepened into something that felt permanent and essential. Natasha had become a fixture in their lives, helping with homework, attending Sophia's school events, and providing the kind of consistent female presence that Raphael knew his daughter needed. The success of Sophia's school integration had exceeded everyone's expectations. She had developed genuine friendships with several classmates, was excelling in her academics, and had even joined the school's art club. Her confidence had blossomed to the point where she was advocating for herself and other students with disabilities, organizing fundraisers for wheelchair accessibility improvements at local parks. Even more exciting, Rainbow Children's Books had offered Sophia a contract for a 3-book series featuring her submarine adventures. The publishing deal would establish a college fund for her future and give her artistic talents professional recognition that most adults never achieve. "I can't believe my daughter is going to be a published author and illustrator," Raphael marveled one Sunday evening as they reviewed the contract terms together. "She's remarkable," Natasha agreed, watching Sophia practice her signature for the book signing events the publisher was already planning. "And she's only getting started. I have a feeling this is just the beginning of amazing things for her." Raphael looked at this extraordinary woman who had transformed their lives in ways he was still discovering. Over the months, Natasha had become indispensable to their family's happiness, but he was increasingly aware that their current arrangement was unfair to her. Natasha was spending most of her free time at their house, helping with Sophia's care and education, attending medical appointments and school events, and providing emotional support for both of them. Yet she continued working her demanding teaching job and struggling with her own financial pressures. Raphael had learned that Natasha worked a second job tutoring students on weekends to make ends meet, and and that she lived in a small apartment across town that required a 40-minute commute to reach them. She never complained about the time or expense involved in being part of their lives, but Raphael could see the toll it was taking. More than the practical concerns, Raphael was troubled by the ambiguous nature of their relationship. They had acknowledged their growing feelings for each other, but they hadn't defined what that meant for their future. Sophia clearly considered Natasha part of their family, but there was no formal recognition of that bond. After weeks of careful consideration, Raphael made a decision that he hoped would benefit everyone involved. "Natasha," he said one Sunday evening after Sophia had gone to bed, "I have something I'd like to discuss with you." She looked up from the student papers she was grading at his kitchen table, a routine that had become familiar over the months. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Raphael took a deep breath, suddenly nervous about her potential reaction. "I've been thinking about our situation, and I'd like to offer you a position." "A position?" Natasha looked confused. "As Sophia's companion and educational coordinator. Full-time with a salary that would allow you to quit your other jobs and focus entirely on helping Sophia reach her potential." Natasha set down her pen and stared at him. "Raphael, I don't understand. Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you the opportunity to be compensated fairly for everything you're already doing," Raphael explained carefully. "You spend more time caring for Sophia than many people spend at their careers. You've become essential to her happiness and development. It seems only right that you should be paid for that contribution." "But I'm not doing this for money," Natasha protested. "I care about you both. What we have isn't a professional relationship." "Exactly," Raphael said. "Which is why I want to remove the financial pressure that might force you to make decisions based on economic necessity rather than what your heart tells you is right." Natasha was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. "What kind of salary are you talking about?" Raphael named a figure that made her eyes widen in shock. It was more than triple what she earned as a teacher, enough to provide financial security she had never experienced. That's an enormous amount of money, Raphael. I couldn't possibly accept that much for what I do." "You undervalue your contribution," Raphael replied firmly. "You've given Sophia confidence, social skills, artistic recognition, and genuine friendship. You've helped her transition to regular school and supported her through every challenge. You've provided guidance and companionship that has made both our lives immeasurably better. How do you put a price on that kind of impact?" "But what would people think?" Natasha asked, clearly struggling with the implications. "Your friends, your business associates, and my colleagues at school. They might assume I'm only here for your money. Do you care what people think?" Raphael asked gently. "Because I've learned that the opinions of people who don't know our story aren't worth considering." Natasha stood up and began pacing around his kitchen, clearly agitated. "This changes everything, Raphael. Right now, I'm here because I want to be. If you pay me to be here, it becomes a job. What happens to our relationship? What happens if things don't work out between us personally?" Raphael hadn't fully considered these complications. "We would work out those details as we go. The important thing is that Sophia's needs are met consistently, regardless of what happens between us. And if I accept this position, what exactly would my responsibilities be? Officially, coordinating Sophia's educational activities, accompanying her to medical appointments, facilitating her social development, and supporting her artistic pursuits. Essentially, everything you're already doing, but with the recognition and compensation it deserves." "And unofficially?" Raphael looked directly into her eyes. "Unofficially, I'm hoping you'll continue being the person who makes our house feel like a home. The person Sophia runs to when she needs comfort. The person who makes me believe that our little family doesn't have to stay broken forever." Natasha stopped pacing and faced him. "Raphael, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. Is this offer connected to your feelings for me? Are you trying to find a way to keep me in your life permanently?" Raphael considered lying or deflecting, but Natasha deserved his complete honesty. "Yes," he admitted. "I love you, Natasha. I love the way you care for my daughter, the way you've brought joy back into our lives, and the way you see possibilities where others see limitations. I want you to be part of our family permanently, and I'm hoping this offer removes any financial barriers that might prevent that from happening. And if I can't return those feelings the way you want me to, then you'd still be the best thing that ever happened to Sophia, and I'd be grateful to have you in her life in whatever capacity you're comfortable with." Natasha sat back down, her expression thoughtful. "This is a lot to process. You're essentially asking me to give up my career, my independence, and my current life to become part of your family." I'm asking you to accept fair compensation for work you're already doing and support you're already providing, Raphael corrected. Your independence would be enhanced, not diminished. You'd have financial security and the freedom to focus on what you're passionate about rather than working multiple jobs to pay rent. What about my teaching? I love my students. You could continue teaching in a different capacity. Private tutoring, educational consulting, maybe even developing curriculum for other children with disabilities. The difference would be that you'd have the financial freedom to choose projects based on interest rather than necessity. They sat in silence for several minutes, both considering the implications of his proposal. Raphael tried to read Natasha's expression, but her face revealed nothing about her internal debate. Can I have some time to think about this? She asked finally. Of course, take all the time you need. And Raphael, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if I decide I can't accept this offer, it won't change our friendship or my relationship with Sophia. I couldn't bear losing both of you because I made the wrong decision about money. I promise, Raphael said solemnly. Whatever you decide, you'll always be welcome in our lives. Over the following week, Natasha seemed preoccupied during her visits. She continued her usual activities with Sophia helping with homework, working on art projects, attending a school play, but Raphael could sense her internal struggle with his offer. Sophia, with the intuitive awareness that children possess, noticed the tension immediately. Is Miss Natasha okay? She asked Raphael one evening after Natasha had left earlier than usual. She seems sad about something. She's just thinking through some important decisions, Raphael explained carefully. Sometimes adults need time to figure out what's best for everyone involved. Is she thinking about not being our friend anymore? Sophia's voice was small and worried. No, Mija. She'll always be our friend. She's just considering some changes that might make things even better for all of us. Good, Sophia said with relief, because I don't want her to ever go away. She makes everything more fun, and she helps me with things you don't know how to do, Papa. Raphael felt his heart clench with understanding. Sophia had come to depend on Natasha not just for companionship, but for the kind of maternal guidance that he couldn't provide. Losing that support would be devastating for his daughter. When Natasha arrived the following Sunday, she seemed more settled, as if she had reached some internal resolution. She participated in their usual dinner routine with her characteristic warmth, but Raphael sensed an underlying seriousness that suggested important conversations were coming. After Sophia went to bed, Natasha asked to speak with Raphael privately in his study. She sat across from his desk with the formal posture of someone delivering a prepared statement. I've given your offer a lot of thought, she began, and I need to tell you about some of my concerns. Raphael braced himself for rejection, trying to prepare for the disappointment that would follow. My biggest fear is that accepting your money would change the nature of our relationship, Natasha continued. Right now, everything between us is based on genuine affection and mutual choice. If I become your employee, even in an unofficial capacity, it creates a power dynamic that could be problematic. I understand that concern, Raphael replied carefully. However, Natasha said, and Raphael felt a flicker of hope, I've also realized that my current situation isn't sustainable. I'm exhausted from working multiple jobs, I can't afford to give Sophia the attention she deserves, and I'm constantly stressed about finances. That stress is already affecting our relationship, just in different ways. She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. I've also thought about what's best for Sophia. She needs consistency and security in her support system. She needs to know that the people she depends on won't disappear because of circumstances beyond her control. Raphael held his breath, afraid to hope for the answer he desperately wanted to hear. So yes, Natasha said with a small smile, I accept your offer, but I have some conditions of my own. Relief flooded through Raphael so powerfully that he felt dizzy. Whatever you need. First, I want a formal employment contract that clearly defines my responsibilities and protects all of us legally. Second, I want to continue teaching part-time at Riverside Elementary, at least initially, to maintain my connection to the broader educational community. Third, I want it clearly understood that my employment status has no bearing on our personal relationship. Those are separate matters that should be evaluated independently. All of that sounds perfectly reasonable, Raphael agreed. And finally, Natasha said, her voice becoming softer, I want you to understand that I'm accepting this position not just because of the money, but because I genuinely want to be part of Sophia's life permanently. She's become the daughter I never had, and losing her would break my heart. What about us? Raphael asked quietly. What does this mean for our relationship? I think, Natasha said carefully, that we should let our personal relationship develop naturally, without the pressure of employment complications. I care about you deeply, Raphael, but I want to be sure that what's between us is real and lasting before we make any permanent commitments. Raphael nodded, understanding her caution even as he hoped for a different answer. I can accept that. The most important thing is that you'll be here for Sophia. I'll be here for both of you, Natasha corrected gently. Just one step at a time. As they worked out the details of her new position over the following hour, Raphael felt a profound sense of gratitude. This remarkable woman was choosing to become part of their family, even with all the complications and uncertainties involved. When Natasha finally prepared to leave that evening, Raphael walked her to the door with a lighter heart than he'd carried in months. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything you're giving up to be here with us." "I'm not giving anything up," Natasha replied with a smile that made his heart race. "I'm gaining a family. That's worth more than any sacrifice." As he watched her drive away, Raphael realized that they had just taken a major step toward becoming the family that Sophia had wished for from the very beginning. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, uncertainty felt like possibility rather than threat. The transition into their new arrangement happened more smoothly than anyone had anticipated. Within 2 weeks, Natasha had resigned from her tutoring jobs and negotiated a part-time teaching schedule at Riverside Elementary that allowed her to spend most afternoons and evenings with Sophia. The formal employment contract provided structure and security for everyone involved, but more importantly, it allowed Natasha to fully commit to Sophia's development without worrying about her own financial survival. "I can't believe how much more relaxed I feel," Natasha confided to Raphael one evening as they reviewed Sophia's latest school reports together. "For the first time in years, I'm not calculating the cost of every grocery item or worrying about whether my car will need repairs I can't afford." "You deserve that security," Raphael replied. "And Sophia deserves to have your complete attention rather than the exhausted remnants of energy left over from multiple jobs." The impact on Sophia was immediate and profound. With Natasha's consistent presence, her confidence continued to soar. She threw herself into her artwork with renewed passion, began working on her second submarine adventure book, and even started a blog about marine conservation that gained attention from environmental education organizations. "Look what Tommy drew for me," Sophia announced one afternoon, wheeling into the kitchen where Raphael and Natasha were preparing dinner together. She held up a child's drawing of herself in her wheelchair surrounded by sea creatures. "He says I'm the coolest artist in our whole school." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Natasha smiled, examining the artwork with genuine appreciation. "Tommy has really captured your artistic spirit." "He wants to be a marine biologist like me when he grows up," Sophia continued excitedly. "I told him I would teach him everything I know about ocean animals." Raphael marveled at his daughter's easy confidence in sharing her knowledge and inspiring others. 6 months ago, she had been isolated and uncertain. Now she was mentoring other children and pursuing her dreams with determination that amazed him. The new arrangement also allowed Raphael and Natasha to explore their relationship without the pressure of uncertainty about her future involvement in their lives. They began taking evening walks together after Sophia went to bed, sharing conversations that ranged from philosophy to business to their hopes for Sophia's future. "I've been thinking about what you said about letting our relationship develop naturally," Raphael said one evening as they strolled through their neighborhood gardens. "I want you to know that I'm not trying to rush anything. Having you in our lives consistently is enough for now." "I appreciate your patience," Natasha replied, slipping her hand into his as they walked. "This is all new territory for me. I've never been in a relationship that included a child, and I want to make sure I'm making decisions for the right reasons." "What would be the wrong reasons?" "Gratitude, loneliness, or the security of your lifestyle," Natasha answered honestly. "I need to know that what I feel for you is genuine love, not just appreciation for the stability you're providing." Raphael squeezed her hand gently. "And what would be the right reasons?" "Wanting to wake up next to you every morning, missing you when we're apart, feeling like my life is more complete when you're in it." She paused, looking up at him with an expression that made his heart skip. "Actually caring about your happiness as much as my own." "And how are you feeling about those criteria lately?" Raphael asked hopefully. "Like I might be getting closer to meeting them," Natasha admitted with a smile that made him want to kiss her right there on the sidewalk. As autumn turned to winter, their family routine became more established and comfortable. Natasha had moved into the guest suite at the Rodriguez house, claiming it was more efficient than commuting daily from her apartment. Raphael suspected there were deeper reasons for the change, but he didn't push for explanations he wasn't sure he was ready to hear. Sophia was thriving under the combined attention. Her first book was scheduled for publication in the spring, and she was already working on illustrations for the second volume. Her school performance remained excellent, and she had been selected to represent her class in the district science fair with a project about ocean acidification. "I want to show people that kids like me can make a difference in protecting the environment," Sophia explained as she worked on her presentation materials. "Just because I can't walk doesn't mean I can't help save the oceans. You're going to inspire so many people," Natasha encouraged, helping Sophia organize her research materials. "Your passion for marine conservation is infectious." Raphael watched these interactions with growing amazement. Natasha didn't just support Sophia's interests, she actively helped expand them into opportunities for real-world impact. Under her guidance, Sophia was developing the confidence to see herself as someone who could influence positive change. One evening in December, as they decorated their Christmas tree together, Sophia made an announcement that stopped both adults in their tracks. "I've been thinking," she said seriously as she placed a starfish ornament on a low branch, "and I think Miss Natasha should marry Papa." Raphael nearly dropped the ornament he was holding, while Natasha turned bright red. "Sophia," Raphael began, but his daughter cut him off with the determination of someone who had given serious thought to her proposal. "Think about it," she continued matter-of-factly. "She already lives here, she takes care of both of us, she loves us and we love her. The only thing missing is the wedding. Then we'd be a real family officially." "We're already a real family," Natasha said gently. "Marriage is just one way to formalize family relationships. But wouldn't you like to be married to Papa?" Sophia asked with innocent directness. "He's really nice and he cooks good food and he gives excellent hugs. Plus he's very handsome." Raphael felt his face burn with embarrassment while Natasha struggled to contain her laughter. "Your father is indeed all of those things," Natasha agreed diplomatically. "But marriage is a very serious decision that adults need to make for themselves, without pressure from well-meaning daughters. I'm just saying," Sophia continued, undeterred, "Christmas would be the perfect time for a proposal. Very romantic with all the lights and decorations." "Mija," Raphael finally managed to speak, "you can't just arrange other people's romantic lives for them." "Why not? I have excellent judgment about people. I knew Miss Natasha was perfect for our family from the first night we met her." Later that evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Raphael and Natasha found themselves sitting by the fireplace, both still processing his daughter's bold suggestion. "I'm sorry about that," Raphael said, poking at the fire with unnecessary intensity. "She's become very direct about expressing her opinions lately." "Don't apologize," Natasha replied softly. "It's actually very sweet that she wants us to be together officially. It shows how secure she feels in our relationship. But it also puts pressure on us that we might not be ready for," Raphael pointed out. "Does it?" Natasha asked, turning to face him on the sofa. "Or does it just give us permission to discuss something we've both been thinking about?" Raphael looked at her with surprise. "Have you been thinking about marriage?" "Haven't you?" "Every day," he admitted honestly. "But I didn't want to pressure you when our situation is already so complicated." "What if it doesn't have to be complicated?" Natasha asked quietly. "What if it could be as simple as two people who love each other deciding to build a life together?" "Do you love me?" Raphael asked, hardly daring to hope for the answer he wanted to hear. "Yes," Natasha said without hesitation. "I love you, I love Sophia, and I love the life we're building together. I want to wake up in this house every morning for the rest of my life, not as your employee or your guest, but as your partner." Raphael felt his heart soar with a happiness so intense it was almost painful. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that your 6-year-old daughter might be the smartest person in this house," Natasha replied with a smile that lit up her entire face. "Then maybe we should listen to her advice." "Natasha Williams," Raphael said, moving closer to her on the sofa, "are you proposing to me?" "I'm telling you that if you were to propose to me, my answer would be yes," she replied, reaching up to touch his face gently. "In that case," Raphael said, taking her hands in both of his, "will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Sophia's stepmother and the person who makes our family complete?" "Yes," Natasha whispered, and then louder, "Yes, absolutely yes." As Raphael kissed her for the first time, both of them felt the profound rightness of this moment. What had begun as a chance encounter at a wedding reception had evolved into the foundation for a real family built on love, acceptance, and shared commitment to each other's happiness. When they finally broke apart, Natasha was crying with joy. Sophia is going to be so smug about being right, she laughed through her tears. Let her be, Raphael replied, pulling her close. She deserves credit for seeing what we were too scared to pursue on our own. As they sat together by the fireplace, planning their future and dreaming about the life they would build together, both Raphael and Natasha felt the healing power of love that accepts people exactly as they are while inspiring them to become their best selves. Their journey from strangers to family had been unexpected, but it had led them to exactly where they were meant to be. The morning after their engagement, Raphael woke up with a mixture of joy and nervousness that made him feel like a teenager again. He had always been confident in business negotiations and major life decisions, but telling his 6-year-old daughter that her casual suggestion had actually come true felt more daunting than any corporate merger he had ever handled. Natasha had spent the night in the guest suite as usual, both of them agreeing to maintain appropriate boundaries until they could have proper conversations with Sophia about their changing relationship. When Raphael came downstairs to start breakfast, he found Natasha already in the kitchen, looking equally excited and anxious. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she stood at the coffee maker. "About 2 hours," she admitted, leaning back against his chest. "I kept thinking about how to tell Sophia, and whether she'll be happy or feel pressure, and what this means for all our routines." "She's going to be thrilled," Raphael assured her, though he felt his own flutter of uncertainty. She practically orchestrated this whole thing. But there's a difference between suggesting something as an abstract idea and dealing with the reality of major changes, Natasha pointed out. Her entire life is about to shift again. They were interrupted by the sound of Sophia's wheelchair coming down the hallway. She appeared in the kitchen doorway still in her pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep. "Good morning, sunshine," Raphael called out cheerfully, perhaps a bit too cheerfully. Sophia looked between her father and Natasha with the sharp perception that children possess when adults are trying to hide something important. "What's going on?" she asked suspiciously. "You both look like you have a secret." Raphael and Natasha exchanged glances, neither sure how to begin this conversation. "Well," Raphael started carefully, "Miss Natasha and I have been talking about what you said last night." "About getting married?" Sophia asked hopefully. "About getting married," Natasha confirmed, kneeling down to Sophia's eye level. "And we wanted to ask you how you would feel if that actually happened." Sophia's face lit up with excitement. "Really? You're really going to get married?" "If you're comfortable with that idea," Raphael said. "This would mean big changes for all of us, and your feelings matter very much." "What kind of changes?" Sophia asked, suddenly looking more serious. Natasha took her hands gently. "Well, I would officially become your stepmother, which means I'd have full responsibilities for taking care of you. Your father and I would be partners in making decisions about your education, health, and future. And eventually, we'd probably all live together as a married family." "But you already do all those things," Sophia pointed out with typical 6-year-old logic. "And you already live here most of the time." "That's true," Raphael acknowledged. "But marriage would make it official and permanent. It would mean we're committed to being a family forever, not just for now." Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the seriousness it deserved. "Would Miss Natasha still be my friend, or would she become like a mom?" she asked finally. "I would always be your friend first," Natasha assured her. "But I would also love to be your stepmother if you want me to be. That would mean loving you and supporting you and being there for you always, just like a biological mother would." "What about my real mom?" Sophia asked, her voice becoming smaller. Would Miss Natasha replace her? Raphael felt his heart clench. This was the question he had been dreading most. "No one could ever replace your mother," he said firmly, sitting down so he could look directly into Sophia's eyes. "Your mama will always be your mama, and her love for you will always be part of who you are. Miss Natasha would be an addition to our family, not a replacement for anyone. I would never try to take your mother's place," Natasha added softly. "I know how much you love her memory, and I respect that completely. I would just be someone else who loves you very much and wants to help take care of you." Sophia looked thoughtful, clearly working through these complex emotional concepts. "Could I still talk about Mama and look at her pictures and remember her stories?" she asked. "Of course," Raphael and Natasha said simultaneously. "And Miss Natasha wouldn't be jealous or sad when I miss my real mom?" "Never," Natasha promised. "Missing your mother shows how much you loved her, and that's beautiful. I would want to help you remember her and honor her memory." Sophia nodded slowly, seeming to accept these assurances. "What about names?" she asked next. Would I have to call Miss Natasha Mom, or could I keep calling her Miss Natasha? You could call me whatever feels right to you, Natasha replied. Miss Natasha, Natasha, Mom, Mama Natasha, whatever makes you comfortable. Names aren't as important as the love behind them. I think I like Mama Natasha, Sophia said thoughtfully. That way you're my mama too, but different from my first mama. Both adults felt tears spring to their eyes at this simple, perfect solution. And you're sure you want to marry Papa? Sophia continued with her systematic approach to this important topic. He can be kind of boring sometimes when he talks about business, and he makes us eat vegetables even when we don't want to. Natasha laughed through her tears. I love your Papa even when he's boring, and I think vegetables are important too. So yes, I'm very sure I want to marry him. And Papa, you're sure you want to marry Miss Natasha? She makes us clean up our art supplies even when we're not finished, and she always wants to talk about feelings. I love Miss Natasha especially because she makes us clean up and talk about feelings, Raphael replied solemnly. Those things make our lives better. Sophia considered this for another moment, then broke into the biggest smile either adult had ever seen. Then yes, she announced, clapping her hands with delight. Yes, you should definitely get married. When can we have the wedding? Can I help plan it? Can I be the flower girl? Can we have cake? Raphael and Natasha looked at each other with relief and joy, realizing that they had worried unnecessarily about Sophia's reaction. We can have the wedding whenever we want, Raphael said, and yes to everything else. But first, don't you want to know about our engagement? You're already engaged? Sophia squealed. When did that happen? Why didn't you tell me right away? It happened last night after you went to bed, Natasha explained. We wanted to ask you how you felt about the idea before we made any official announcements. Did Papa get down on one knee? Sophia asked eagerly. Did he have a ring? Was it romantic? Raphael laughed at his daughter's interest in the romantic details. It was very romantic, but I don't have a ring yet. I was hoping you might want to help me pick one out. Really? I can help choose Mama Natasha's engagement ring? Sophia bounced excitedly in her wheelchair. Who better to help than the person who brought us together in the first place? Natasha said warmly. As they ate breakfast together, Sophia peppered them with questions about wedding plans, honeymoon destinations, and whether they would have more children. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and both adults found themselves caught up in her excitement about their future as an official family. I have the best idea, Sophia announced as she finished her pancakes. We should get married at the beach. Then I could finally see the real ocean, and we could have pictures of dolphins, and it would be perfect for my submarine stories. Raphael felt his chest tighten with emotion. His daughter's dream of seeing the ocean had been mentioned so many times, yet he had never made it happen due to logistics and accessibility concerns. You know what, Mija? He said impulsively. A beach wedding sounds perfect. We'll make sure to find a location that's fully accessible so you can get right down to the water. Really? Sophia's eyes went wide with disbelief. We're really going to have a wedding at the beach? If that's what you want, that's what we'll do, Natasha agreed immediately. I can't think of anything more beautiful than celebrating our family by the ocean you love so much. Sophia let out a shriek of pure joy that brought their housekeeper Maria running from the laundry room to make sure no one was hurt. Maria, Sophia called out excitedly. Papa and Miss Natasha are getting married and we're having the wedding at the beach and I'm going to see real dolphins. Maria beamed with happiness, clearly delighted by this news. Que maravilloso. Congratulations to both of you. This little girl has been hoping for this for months. Has she really? Natasha asked with interest. Oh yes, Maria nodded. She tells me all the time that you and Mr. Raphael belong together. She says you make him smile more than anyone since Mrs. Isabella. Raphael felt his heart squeeze at this observation from someone who had known their family for years. As the morning progressed and they began making preliminary wedding plans, Raphael found himself marveling at how naturally everything was falling into place. Sophia's acceptance and enthusiasm had removed any lingering doubts about whether they were making the right decision. I want to call Tommy and Sarah and everyone at school, Sophia announced as they moved to the living room to continue their planning. I want them to know that I'm getting a new mama and we're having the most amazing wedding ever. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Natasha agreed. Your friends should definitely hear this news from you first. As Sophia wheeled off to make her phone calls, Raphael pulled Natasha into his arms. I can't believe how perfectly she's handling this, he said, still amazed by his daughter's emotional maturity. She's been ready for this longer than we have, Natasha replied, wrapping her arms around his neck. I think she knew we belonged together before we figured it out ourselves. No more doubts? Raphael asked, searching her face for any signs of uncertainty. None, Natasha replied firmly. This feels right in every possible way. We're going to be so happy together. As they heard Sophia's excited chatter from the next room, telling her friends about their upcoming beach wedding, both Raphael and Natasha felt the profound peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Their confession of love had been met with more enthusiasm than they could have hoped for, and their future as a family felt bright with possibility. 1 year later, Sophia Rodriguez Williams sat in her specially decorated wheelchair on the sandy beach of Kiowa Island, South Carolina, wearing a pale pink dress and a flower crown that made her look like a fairy tale princess. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, its waves creating the soundtrack for the most perfect wedding anyone could have imagined. Are you ready, flower girl? Natasha asked, kneeling beside Sophia's wheelchair to adjust her flower basket one final time. I've been ready for this wedding since the day we met you, Sophia replied with the confidence of a 7-year-old who had helped plan every detail of the celebration. The past year had been a whirlwind of positive changes. Sophia's first book, Submarine Adventures, The Underwater Library, had become a bestseller in children's literature, earning recognition for its unique perspective on disability and environmental conservation. She was already working on her 4th book and had been invited to speak in several schools about marine biology and following your dreams. Even more importantly, Sophia had thrived in her new family dynamic. Natasha had officially adopted her 6 months earlier, making their bond legally permanent. The adoption ceremony had been almost as emotional as today's wedding, with Sophia proudly declaring that she now had 2 mamas who loved me in heaven and on earth. Places everyone, called Elena Martinez, who had offered to coordinate the wedding as her gift to the couple who had found love at her own reception. The ceremony setup was breathtaking in its simplicity. White chairs arranged in the sand faced an arch of driftwood and sea glass, with the Atlantic Ocean providing a backdrop that needed no additional decoration. Sophia had insisted on dolphins in the ceremony, and by some miracle of nature, a pod of dolphins had been spotted playing in the distance that morning, as if the ocean itself was celebrating their union. Raphael stood at the altar with his best man James, looking more handsome and relaxed than Sophia had ever seen him. The stress and loneliness that had shadowed his face for years had been replaced by the confidence of a man who knew he was loved completely. As the acoustic guitar began playing Sophia's favorite song, La Vie en Rose, she started her processional as Flower Girl. Her wheelchair had been decorated with ribbons and flowers, and she scattered rose petals with the enthusiasm of someone who understood the significance of this moment. The small gathering of guests, close friends, family, and some of Sophia's classmates smiled with genuine joy as she made her way down the sandy island. Many of them had witnessed the transformation of this family over the past 18 months, and everyone understood they were celebrating something truly special. When Sophia reached the front, she took her designated place next to where Natasha would stand, beaming with pride in her important role in bringing her family together. Then the music changed to Canon in D, and every head turned to watch Natasha walk down the aisle. She wore a flowing ivory dress that moved beautifully in the ocean breeze, her hair adorned with small white flowers that Sophia had helped select. But what made her truly radiant was the pure happiness that seemed to glow from within. Natasha had chosen to walk alone down the aisle, symbolizing that she was choosing this family of her own free will. As she approached Raphael, her eyes were locked on his face, and the love that passed between them was so evident that several guests reached for tissues. When she reached the altar, Raphael took her hands and whispered something that made her laugh softly, a private moment in the midst of their public celebration. Dearly beloved, began the officiant, a close friend of Raphael's who had known the family throughout their journey, we are gathered here today to witness and celebrate the union of Raphael and Natasha, and the formation of a family built on love, acceptance, and shared dreams. As the ceremony continued, Sophia listened to every word with rapt attention. This wasn't just her father's wedding, it was the official beginning of the family she had dreamed of since that first night at Elena's reception. Raphael and Natasha have written their own vows, the officiant announced, which they will now share with each other and with all of us. Raphael spoke first, his voice strong and clear as it carried across the beach. Natasha, 18 months ago, you walked into our lives and saw possibilities where others saw limitations. You looked at my daughter and saw not a disabled child to be pitied, but a brilliant artist with stories to tell. You looked at me and saw not a broken single father, but a man capable of love and growth. His voice caught slightly with emotion before he continued. You have given Sophia the confidence to pursue her dreams and the knowledge that she is valued exactly as she is. You have given me the courage to believe that our small family didn't have to stay isolated and incomplete forever. Today I promise to love you, support you, and cherish you for the rest of my life. I promise to be worthy of the gift you've given us by choosing to be our family. There wasn't a dry eye on the beach as Raphael finished his vows. Even Sophia was wiping tears from her cheeks, overwhelmed by the beauty of her father's words. Then it was Natasha's turn, and her voice carried the same strength and conviction. Raphael, when I met you and Sophia, I thought I was just showing kindness to a lonely child at a wedding. I had no idea I was about to meet the family I had been searching for my entire life without knowing it. She turned slightly to include Sophia in her gaze. Sophia, you taught me that love doesn't require biology, that family is created by choice and commitment, and that the most important thing we can give children is the belief that they are capable of extraordinary things. Raphael, you showed me what it means to love someone so completely that their happiness becomes more important than your own comfort. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. Today, I promise to love both of you with everything I have. I promise to support Sophia's dreams and help her reach for goals that have no limits. I promise to be your partner, Raphael, in building a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. And I promise to honor the memory of Isabella by loving her daughter as if she were my own, because in every way that matters, she is. Sophia let out a small sob of happiness, and several guests openly wept at the beauty of vows that included not just the couple, but the entire family they were forming together. The rings, the officiant requested, and Sophia proudly wheeled forward with the ring pillow she had been guarding carefully. As Raphael and Natasha exchanged rings, they each also placed a small matching ring on Sophia's finger, a symbol that she was an equal part of this union, not just a witness to it. By the power vested in me by the state of South Carolina, the officiant declared, I now pronounce you husband and wife, and officially welcome this beautiful family into existence. Raphael, you may kiss your bride. As Raphael and Natasha kissed for the first time as a married couple, the dolphins in the distance seemed to leap higher, creating a magical backdrop that made Sophia gasp with delight. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant announced with joy, I present to you the Rodriguez-Williams family. The reception was held right there on the beach, with tables set in the sand and string lights creating a warm glow as the sun began to set. Sophia held court at the head table, regaling anyone who would listen with stories about how she had known from the beginning that her father and new stepmother belonged together. I told them they should get married way back at Christmas, she informed Tommy, who had flown in with his parents to attend the wedding. Sometimes grown-ups need kids to help them figure out obvious things. During the father-daughter dance, Raphael spun Sophia's wheelchair gently to the music, both of them laughing as they moved together. Then Natasha joined them, and for the first time, all three of them danced together as an official family. Thank you, Mija, Raphael whispered to Sophia as they swayed to the music, for knowing what we needed before we did. Thank you for listening to me, Sophia replied with wisdom beyond her years, and for making our family complete. As the evening progressed, guests shared toasts that celebrated not just the marriage, but the remarkable journey that had brought this family together. Elena spoke about the magic of chance encounters, James talked about watching Raphael discover happiness again, and several of Sophia's teachers shared stories about her growing confidence and achievements. But the most memorable toast came from Sophia herself, who insisted on having her say about this important day. Standing up in her wheelchair with a glass of sparkling apple cider, she cleared her throat importantly. I want to say something about my papa and my new mama Natasha, she began, her voice carrying clearly across the beach. 18 months ago, Papa and I went to a wedding where nobody wanted to talk to me because of my wheelchair. I felt sad and lonely, and I thought maybe that's just how life would always be. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word from this remarkable child. But then Mama Natasha came over and asked why I was sitting alone. She didn't care about my wheelchair. She cared about me, my thoughts, my dreams, my stories about submarines and dolphins. She made me feel special and important. Sophia paused, looking between her parents with love. She taught me that I could go to regular school and make friends and write books and do anything I dreamed of. She taught Papa that our family didn't have to be sad anymore. And she taught both of us that love makes everything possible. Her voice grew stronger as she concluded. So I want to say thank you to Mama Natasha for choosing to be our family, and congratulations to both of you for listening to your hearts. And also, I was totally right about you two belonging together, so next time I have a good idea, you should probably listen to me right away. The beach erupted in laughter and applause, with many guests wiping away tears of the profound wisdom and joy of this 7-year-old who had orchestrated her own family's happiness. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Raphael and Natasha walked along the water's edge with Sophia, her wheelchair moving easily across the packed sand near the waves. "Did you ever imagine this?" Natasha asked, looking out at the ocean that had always represented Sophia's dreams. 18 months ago, did you think we'd be here?" "Never," Raphael replied honestly. "I thought we were destined to stay in our safe, small world forever. I couldn't see past my fear of Sophia being hurt or rejected. And now," Natasha prompted. "Now I realize that the biggest risk would have been not taking any risks at all," he replied, watching Sophia collect shells along the shoreline. "You taught us both that life is meant to be lived fully, even when that means being vulnerable." "Look," Sophia called out excitedly, pointing toward the water. "Dolphins." Sure enough, a pod of dolphins was playing in the waves just offshore, their sleek bodies arcing through the water in the moonlight. It was as if the ocean was offering its own blessing on their new family. "Make a wish," Natasha suggested, taking Raphael's hand as they watched the magical scene. "I don't need to," Raphael replied, pulling both his wife and daughter close. "Everything I could ever wish for is right here." As they stood together on the beach, a successful businessman who had learned to open his heart, a teacher who had found her true calling as a mother and wife, and a remarkable little girl who had refused to let disability define her possibilities, they represented something beautiful about the power of love to heal, transform, and create families in unexpected ways. Sophia's first submarine adventure book had ended with the main character discovering that the greatest treasures weren't found in underwater caves, but in the connections we make with others who see our true worth. As she looked up at her father and stepmother silhouetted against the starry sky, she realized that life had given her an even better ending than any story she could write. Their journey from strangers at a wedding to a family united by love had proved that sometimes the most beautiful adventures begin with someone having the courage to ask a simple question. Why is this beautiful little girl sitting all alone? The answer had changed all their lives forever, and as they walked back toward their beachfront hotel with sand in their shoes and joy in their hearts, all three of them knew that their real adventure as a family was just beginning. 6 months later, Sophia Rodriguez Williams published her 5th submarine adventure book, dedicated to Papa and Mama Natasha, who taught me that every ending is really just a new beginning. The book became her most successful yet, inspiring children around the world to believe in the power of love, acceptance, and the courage to pursue impossible dreams. And in a beautiful beachfront house overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the Rodriguez-Williams family continued to prove every day that the most extraordinary families are often formed not by birth, but by choice, commitment, and the simple decision to see the beauty in others exactly as they are.